10 things you give up when you have sex before marriage. Number 1. You give up your ability to bond with your spouse, to attach yourself to the one who you want to spend the rest of your life with. And this attachment is critical if you are to have a successful and lasting marriage. In the books of God, we learn that the first sexual experience that a human adult should have is within marriage, is when they get married. And when both husband and wife have saved themselves for each other, have saved themselves for marriage, that is when sex will have its greatest power. Its greatest power to bond and unite the two souls, the two lovers, for eternity. And isn't that what we hope for when we get married? To stick together, to stay together forever. Isn't that what we say with the wedding vow? I will love you, I will honor you for all the days of my life, until death do us part. And in the words of Abdu'l-Baha, when two souls get married, they are to enjoy everlasting unity throughout all the worlds of God. That is the purpose of marriage, to stick together forever. See, sex can only truly be appreciated within the context of marriage, because it is for marriage that sex has been created. And within this divinely ordained institution, sex produces two things. It creates two things: babies and an unbreakable bond between man and woman, between husband and wife. If we want to tap into this power latent within sex, this superhuman power, because nothing else can unite two souls together for eternity. Nothing. There is nothing in the world that can do that, except for sex. And if we want to tap into this power, we must obey the golden rule of chastity before marriage, of maintaining one's sexual purity. See, sex can be compared to packing tape. If you get some packing tape and apply it to a box and let it be, it'll hold that box for decades. Now, if you remove that packing tape and apply it to another box, it won't hold as well. And if you keep removing that tape and applying it to different boxes, it won't do anything, because the tape has now lost its glue. Now, sex is pretty much the same thing, in that when it is shared with more than one person, it loses its power to bond. It loses its glue to unite man and woman, to unite two lovers, both in this world and throughout eternity. Sex is the most intimate, the most pleasurable experience that can be shared between two lovers, between two human beings. And when you have sex for the first time with your spouse, you will become strongly attached to them, because you now associate this heavenly experience with them, and with them only. If you experience love making with other people before marriage, then when you get married and you have sex with your spouse, sex is no longer special. It loses its significance. It is no longer this amazing experience that is exclusive to them. And so because of this, your attachment to your spouse will be weak. Another reason why we become so attached when we have sex is because of the hormone oxytocin that we produce and release during sex. Now, this hormone is known for its powers of increasing trust and increasing the bond between human beings. And it is this very same hormone that is responsible for that superhuman bond that exists between mother and baby when she gives birth. Now, many scientific studies show that multiple sexual partners leads to lower levels of oxytocin, which then leads to a weakened ability to bond. We'll be looking into that a little more in depth later. Number 2, you give up mental and emotional health. So now we understand that by God's design, we are only to have sex with the person we marry. And the person we marry, we vow to stay with them forever. And so from this, we can understand, we can conclude that the bond created between two souls by sex within marriage was never meant to be broken. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man separate. So when we don't have this mindset of chastity, marriage, and then eternity, when we have sexual, intimate relationships outside of this design, we are setting ourselves up for mental and emotional damage, for mental and emotional trauma. You may have a friend or family who has been through a breakup after having been intimate with another person, sexually intimate. And so they were never whole again. They were never the same. They couldn't eat, they couldn't sleep, they became clinically depressed, they started developing personality disorders, they were overcome with feelings of resentment, unworthiness, anger, self-hate. It was like a part of them was missing. And even when they would get into a new relationship, they still can't get over the other person. That's how much it affected them. That's how much it hurt them, traumatized them. And so they were never whole again. And that's what happens when we have sex with another human being. We become one flesh. We become one on every level. In soul, in mind, in heart. And so when we go our separate ways, that person takes a part of you and you take a part of them. And neither of you are whole ever again. Because the bond was never meant to be broken. And so when we have sex with more people, we continue to give parts of us away until there is nothing left. And now we want to marry. With nothing of ourselves, only parts of other people. And a huge emotional baggage of hurt and pain and resentment and mental disorder. That's what we're taking into this relationship with the one who we love and we want to be with for eternity. That is what we're taking as a gift into that relationship. Maybe a couple STDs too, who knows. And so this is going to affect the quality of this marriage. Number 3, you give up on amazing sex with your soulmate through the inevitable comparison of your sexual partners, both their bodies and their performances. Comparison is the thief of joy, said Theodore Roosevelt. And so now you suffer because you can't get aroused by your partner. Your partner can't satisfy you. You can't get satisfaction out of sex. It's boring now. It's frustrating because of all that you have seen and all that you have experienced. And your partner suffers too because they can't satisfy you. They can't please you anymore. And so now they get feelings of incompetency. Oh, I'm not attractive enough. When in fact, the issue is with the person that cannot get aroused because they have been feeding their desires outside of marriage, increasing their want, and thereby not being satisfied with what they have. They have become covetous. The covetous are never contented. And so the fault is not with the other person. The fault is with the one, for the most part, with the one who cannot be satisfied. And so a lot of times, when you are hard to please, you are hard to love. And that is when your partner will start dropping out of the relationship. Because true happiness is in giving, loving, and serving and sacrificing. When you can't love your partner, when you can't please your partner, you feel useless. You will begin to find and seek other venues, other opportunities of feeling appreciated and loving. And that's when adultery happens and a lot of other crazy stuff. But isn't sexual experience necessary for an exciting, fulfilling, satisfying sex life with my partner? The answer is no. Because if both man and woman, husband and wife, have been chaste, are starting fresh, are sexually pure, then however your husband or your wife makes love to you is amazing. If you've never had sex before, your partner will be the best you ever had. Briefly stated, the Baha'i conception of sex is based on the belief that chastity should be strictly practiced by both sexes, not only because it is in itself highly commendable ethically, but also due to its being the only way to a happy and successful marital life. With chastity, sexual purity, and faithfulness comes the greatest sexual satisfaction. The more true we stay to our lover, both physically and mentally, the more satisfied we will be sexually. The stronger the marriage, the more eternal the bond. Because if we don't, if we have sex outside of marriage, if we experience things outside of marriage, we will not be content through comparison. And if we feed our eyes these images, pornography, soft porn, all these celebrities that we're following, topless guys getting ripped in the gym, women with their yoga pants, with their breasts oozing out. If we're looking at all these bodies, thousands of different bodies, suddenly your husband doesn't have attractive shoulders anymore. Suddenly your wife doesn't have a nice ass. We need to understand the effect of what we look at, what we tune into. What we look at increases our desire. And the more covetous we become, the more we desire, the more unhappy we will be with what we have. The more you will not be able to appreciate your wifey or your husband. And so sexual purity and chastity and being true in the mind and with your body and with your eyes to your spouse is critical. Let your eyes be chaste. When we are pure and faithful to our partner, we will always be satisfied by them. They will be the most beautiful thing we have ever experienced. And this, my friends, increases oxytocin levels, which increases your arousal, makes your orgasms more potent and more powerful. And the experience of sex, amazing. Increased oxytocin levels, amazing sex. And you can only have large amounts of oxytocin released when your partner satisfies you, when you are not covetous, when your desires have not been blown out of proportion because of the things you are feeding your eyes. Number 4, you give up your physical health and longevity. Every year, 1 million cases of gonorrhea are reported. And these are only the ones that are reported. And 4 million cases of chlamydia are reported every year. You can imagine how many cases of syphilis are reported, of AIDS, etc., etc. Most people who become infected don't even know they are infected, because for most of these STDs and STIs, the symptoms don't manifest till 6 to 8 months later. The other scenario is the individual knows they have an STD, so they go to the doctor to get treatment, and they get symptomatic treatment. Their symptoms are masked through the use of drugs, and the disease is driven inward and suppressed. And so now they think they don't have the disease anymore. And so they will go ahead and have sex with you and with other people and pass it on. Another scenario is when an individual is struggling with an STI or an STD, and yet still they will have sex with you. They will lie to you if they have to. I mean, who would ever do that, right? Who would ever do that? Look at the condition of the world today. Look at all the rape that's happening. Take that as an example, where a human being is so full of lust, they don't care about the well-being and the health of another person. They just want to satisfy their desires. They're in such a state of inner turmoil and desire that they will do anything to get what they want. And in the same manner, a person with an STD will have no trouble lying to you and passing the disease on to you, so as long as they can satisfy their desire once, twice, 3 times, 4 times with you. I don't know about you guys, but the last thing I want to have to deal with is an STD or an STI. Right? I need my health. I want to be there for my family, my friends, for society. I want to be able to have healthy, happy, painless sex with my wife. I can't tell you how many young people come into the homeopathic clinic at my school who are experiencing painful sex, painful coition, women and their painful vaginas, and men whose penises are bleeding. I know it sounds funny, but it's not. Okay? It's not funny.
It's not funny.
Do you know how much peace of mind and tranquility comes when you know your partner is sexually pure? You don't have to worry about any STDs, any pain in your genitalia when you're making love to your wife or your husband. That's what I want to tap into. I want to have amazing sex and not have to worry about STDs. Come on, guys. You know, if you don't have an STD or an STI, you are a lucky person. You are one of the few. And let's keep it that way. Another cool thing that takes place when we have sex with another person is the exchange of bacterial ecosystems of the two individuals. And you know, some people will say that's disgusting, but it's not. Because we are comprised of trillions of bacterial cells and microorganisms. In fact, bacterial cells outnumber human cells 10 to 1. So we are more bacteria than we are human. And so this bacteria is exchanged through intercourse between husband and wife. And now this process, you know, when the individuals adapt to each other's ecosystem, each other's bacteria, they become more pleasing to each other. So if there was anything displeasing or repugnant prior to having sex, now they become pleasing to each other. Now it becomes acceptable. Now it actually becomes desirable. Bacteria also have the capacity of exchanging DNA through a process that is called bacterial conjugation. So when we have sex, we are exchanging DNA through bacteria. We are exchanging our blueprint, our essence, with the other person. And so thereby we adapt, we assimilate and we adapt to it. And this is how we become one flesh on the physical level. This may explain why couples become more alike over the years. this process of exchange and assimilation to another human being's bacterial ecosystem is not an easy task for the human body. And by design, according to God's books, we were meant to do it only with one person. And when we do this with many people, there are consequences, such as a weakened immunity, weakened vitality. Flee fornication. Every sin that a man doeth is without the body. But he that committeth fornication sinneth against his own body. In addition to this bacterial exchange that takes place on the physical level between two people who have sex, there is also an exchange of energy, of aura, that we need to be aware of. An exchange of soul, because essentially the physical world is a reflection of spiritual conditions, of the spiritual world. And so when two people are coming together, they're in fact coming together on a spiritual level, first and foremost. And the physical is merely a symbol, a reflection of that. And so when we are having thoughts of casual sex, these are the things we need to consider. Do I want to exchange my bacterial ecosystem with them? And do I want their bacteria? Do I want their emotions? Do I want to exchange soul matter with that person? All of these energies affect us on every level, affect our health, affect our existence. You become one. Think about that. You become one on every level when you have sex with another human being. That changes who you are forever. Number 5, you give up on the development of your soul. See, the purpose of life is to know God. Thou hast created me to know thee and to worship thee. And the knowledge of God is obtained through the knowledge of one's own self. He hath known God who hath known himself. And so, throughout the journey of life, there are two main stages through which we can gain self-knowledge. The first stage is when we are single, through the tests of life, by reading the writings every day, because by doing so we are bringing ourselves to account in the mirror of the Word of God. And then the second stage, where we get to dive even deeper into our own selves, is when we get married. There is no relationship more intimate than that. And relationships are as mirrors. They reflect the good in you, your strengths, and they reflect your weaknesses, the bad in you. And so it is through this relationship of opposites, through man and woman, male and female, yin and yang, earth and fire, through this relationship of opposites that we get to understand ourselves. Baha'u'llah says adultery retards the progress of the soul in the afterlife. So grievous is it. And this adultery has been translated from the Arabic, which signifies both adultery and fornication. Fornication meaning having sexual relationships when one is not married. So in other words, when we fornicate, when we have sex before marriage, when we lose our virginity before marriage, we are retarding the progress of our soul in the afterlife. Herein lies the connection between chastity and spiritual development and eternal life. See, when we are chaste, that bond is very strong with our partner. That love and that attachment is very strong with our partner. So when we are faced with tests, we are more inclined to make that sacrifice, make that compromise, transform, thereby spiritually growing, becoming more conscious of the self. gaining more self-knowledge, more knowledge of God, and staying within that relationship and growing as a couple together, making that love even stronger. The thought of leaving the relationship would never cross your mind because you're so attached to that person through the chastity, through your sexual purity. That is one of the beautiful things about marriage, in that it is a portal to salvation, if done properly. Among them he established the law of marriage, made it as a fortress for well-being and salvation. This eternal bond should be made secure by a firm covenant, and the intention should be to foster harmony, fellowship, and unity, and to attain everlasting life. Individuals who have a weak bond because of the lack of chastity before marriage, when they are faced with the fire of tests, they will bounce out of that relationship, thereby depriving themselves of that golden, that priceless opportunity of gaining self-knowledge at that deeper level through that relationship, through that intimate relationship with another human being. So next week I'm going to share with you 5 other things that you give up when you have sex before marriage. Sex is truly such a powerful, magical gift that God has given to us, and we should definitely think a little bit before we use it.